2 a.m. A few comments before we start. Again, I hope everyone is doing as well as possible through this crisis. I'd like to thank the staff for their preparation of the meeting and the efforts over the last 2 weeks. Audience, please keep your phones muted, and also thank you for joining the call today. Board members, please keep your phones muted unless you are speaking, which will help us with background noise. Board members, when making a motion, please state your name, announce your name, and if you're speaking, announce your name each time. For any discussions, I will address each board member alphabetically to help avoid talking over each other. If there are any items that we feel are difficult through this phone conversation, I will be glad to table them for the next meeting. Last, I am sorry we had to postpone honoring Mr. McGill today, but hopefully we can do this at our May meeting in person. So with that, I will read the conflict of interest reminder. In accordance with General Statute 138A-15, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before the today? If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from any undue participation in the particular matter involved. So I will start with Ms. Alfrance. Any conflict?
No.
Ms. Burnham, any conflict?
No.
Ms. Carmichael?
No.
Mr. McGill?
No, sir.
Ms. Scotton?
No.
Mr. Talent?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
No.
Mr. Warren?
No.
Thank you. I'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is to consider approving the agenda with items taken in any order as determined by the chairman. May I have a motion to do so?
This is Tim. I'll make a motion that we do that.
Do we have a second?
This is Clay.
So we will go with Chuck on that one.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you. Motion carried. Next, we'll move to the approval of minutes. We can approve these both together if no one has any changes or amendments to the minutes other than I believe Mr. McGill has sent something in, and actually that was on the closed session minutes, so that does not apply. Are there any other changes from anyone?
Unknown participant is now joining.
Don, do you need to do anything with that call?
Do we have somebody that just joined?
Yes, you do.
Yeah. Can you identify yourself just so we can know the last, or just, you don't even have to identify yourself, the last 4 digits of your phone number, just so we can mute non-board members.
Uh, 7336.
Thank you.
So I'll move back to approval of minutes. Anyone have any corrections, deletions, amendments to the minutes? If not, could I have a motion that we approve Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 1A, the minutes from January 28th and March the 5th?
This is Clay.
So we have Clay with a motion, and may I have a second, please?
This is Lynn. I second it.
Second by Lynn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposition? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move to the finance report with Mr. Rogers.
Okay. Very briefly, there's no real issues with finance, except that there was one thing I did want to point to your attention to. If you look at use tax expenses. We had budgeted $86,000, and the actual is 95. And what that reflects is when we had to make the order or put out the order to the appraisers, we were going with the historical number of $10 for the postage. We were not able to get a hard number from. We actually had to go through the foundation's mailing service, not the foundation themselves, and the number ended up being $15 instead of 10. So that is why the additional roughly $9,000 in cost. So it would have been. So that's the discrepancy there. We have, or we may not be able to get the hard cost of mailing in time. So we'll take that into account going forward. It doesn't cause us any problem, but that's why there's a large discrepancy on the line item. And everything else seems to be kind of falling in line. Don't see any major changes at this point.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Rogers? If not, we will move to legal. Ms. Panico, if you would, probable cause, Exhibit 3.
Yeah, so does anyone have any questions on any of these?
So I will start, again, I will go alphabetically, start down the list if anyone has any questions with cases, and if you do have one, if you'll give me just a moment to try to write those down as we go. Ms. Alfront?
I do not have any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Vernon?
No questions.
Thank you. Ms. Carmichael?
No questions.
Mr. McGill?
No questions, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Scotton?
No questions.
Mr. Talent?
None.
Mr. Taylor?
No questions.
Mr. Warren?
I have 2 questions. One is on case with the last 4 0027, which is page 4. The other is 0049, which is page 21.
Okay, we got 0027 and 0049. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You're a little bit hard to hear, Mike.
Yeah, Mike, you're fading out. You were very clear earlier, but you faded a little.
Yeah, am I better now?
Yeah.
Yes. Perfect.
Okay.
So I would entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation on all the other cases. If someone would make that motion, please. Except for 27 and 49.
This is Mike, so moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Warren to approve all cases except for 007 and 0049. Do we have a second?
This is
So we'll go with Mr. McGill for the second on that.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Mr. Warren, if you would like to start with 027 with your question.
Okay, I just had one question and that was this report was filed. Tell me if you can't hear me, I'll move around. But this report was written on reported on a 10-4, and it was not for the mortgage finance transaction. Was the intended use properly stated other than in the pre-credit form has been improperly stated?
Jeff, can you respond to that
Yeah,
question?
let me check, make sure I'm giving the right information. Yes, it was.
Okay.
It was, and it was not for mortgage.
Okay, so there was an attempt to override the pre-printed section of the form. Can you
Yes,
use
they checked other.
Okay. I'm all right with that one, so I'll move on to the next one. And the next one, really, I just had a concern. Said not to, so I have some concerns on that. And I mean, I'm getting an echo on my phone, so it's hard to keep track of
Yeah, you're fading a little bit, Mike.
Okay, and I'm getting an echo on my phone. But
I heard what you said.
Yeah, we heard the question. I'll try to repeat it. The concern was that the respondent contacted the complainant even after the correspondence from the board told him not to.
And Mike, if I could respond to that, and if Stacy has anything to add, he can. We had trouble finding anything in the rules or the statute that specifically violated, and we wanted to be really clear to make sure that if we were going to say something, that it was in the rules and statutes, given this situation. We wanted to be careful about that. So that's why we didn't go down that road. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, we need to have something enforceable to be able to enforce it. I might would just want to amend the recommendation to dismiss with the warning to prescribe the separate properly as well as
The property, the subject property, and follow the instructions of the board.
Yeah.
process.
To Mike and Sandra, this is David. This is a case I had a concern about as well. And so I'm comfortable with what Mr. Warren has said. Do any other board members have any questions concerning this? I will avoid the alphabetical since there were earlier no questions. Does anyone have any? Good. So let's address these. Let's take the first case, 0027. If someone would make a motion to go ahead and accept that one with the staff recommendations.
This is Mike. I'll move to accept that one with staff recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Do I have a second?
This is Tim. I second that.
I have a second by Mr. Talent. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? I'll have a second by Ms. Scotton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carried. Thank you. So we will move next to the pending hearing report. Mr. Rogers.
Okay, your pending hearing report. There's five cases on it. you will probably be hearing from a couple of those later in closed session with consent orders. So that's where we are on that.
Would you like to move to disciplinary actions?
If you would like, and we're going into kind of the reports phase, I can just identify what I'm on and ask for questions as I finish any comment I have, and if I need to slow down or anything, just let me know. So, item 5 is your disciplinary actions year to date, and as you see, we've received 13 cases through February. We had 68 last year. That's probably a fairly similar pace. 7 months to put us around 80, so, or in the low 80s. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think too many people are concerned with filing a complaint right now. When we get on the other side of this, you know, I know there's a lot more refinance activity and stuff, so we certainly could have complaints just on how this has been handled. So we just don't know. But we aren't. I don't think that's people's focus presently. Moving item 6 is your list of people that have been registered, licensed, certified since the last meeting for January and February. I think you can see there we still had a fairly active period in those 2 months. I have had a good bit of trainees. I wish I had that number right in front of me, but I think we had gone about 100 over where we were a year ago. So just on trainees, and I know there've been a lot of classes, and during the last last quarter of last year and the first quarter of this year. So a lot of people getting in, I think, due to the changes in the criteria, opening the door to more people. We currently now have 528 trainees, so that's more than it's been in quite some time. But, and then on item 7 is new appraisal management companies registered since the last meeting. We had 3. So, you know, we talk every year about we wonder if we're going to get any new ones in that year. We budget low, and we still manage to get several each year, so that's holding true. Item 8 is your test center report. We'll discuss this a little more when we get into issues that are involving COVID-19, but I will tell you as we're reviewing this, the test center is closed from, they notified us March 16th, which was last Monday, and at a minimum, they will be closed until April 16th. So there's nobody can test to upgrade for a month. We can still issue with trainees because there's no test involved. But they will not be able to get through the testing process until at least mid-April. And after that, you have your reports from the foundation. I don't think there's, just to make you aware, there's with news on before we got to COVID-19 issues, there was going to be Congress had requested a GAO study of FIREA, which has been requested by the foundation. So there's a
Sammy Dawes is now joining.
A new there's a release on that, and then there's a couple of the first 2 reports I think address that issue. Just to let you know, there was supposed to be an ASC meeting in connection with the Aero conference, and that has been that will be live streamed only. There won't be any public there. I think they'll all actually be streaming from their individual residences, which is next Friday. If anybody needs specifics, you can go on the foundation website and get login information. But if if you're having trouble with that, any board members can reach out to staff, and we'll help you. I know a lot of us might have a little more time to watch something like that now than we normally would. So if you're interested in that, and again, just dealing with COVID-19 issues. There has been some information come out from the subcommittee and foundation. There will be a conference call with state regulators on Thursday to answer some questions about how we should proceed. I've gotten some answers ahead of time just because of some issues we're going to be dealing with later today. But hopefully that'll add a little more clarity. I'll say this now and I'll say it again in a little bit. I know that a lot of boards are taking different actions, making different rules, making different exceptions. I will remind board members, I think all of you know this, but I know a lot of our appraisal population does not quite understand that we have a lot of federal oversight that other boards and commissions don't have, and where they can change a rule and it's just a matter of the board voting on it. We have to make sure we're staying in compliance and within the parameters that we're allowed. There was a lot of, you saw some revisions to the proposed emergency rule we'll talk about later, and a lot of that was because we were having to get answers up the chain. So just a reminder of that, and we'll talk about it more in a little bit.
Don, I think we had someone else join the call. Do you need them to identify their last four digits?
Yeah. Mindy was able to capture that.
Very good. So the next item on our agenda is the COVID-19 issues, and then I will let Ms. Panico speak to that and Mr. Rogers.
You want to do the rule last, or you want to do it? Yeah, I was just going to talk more in general. Just so you kind of have some understanding, and some of this I scheduled for my staff report, so I won't double up. I'll try to cover it now. As I said, there is a call with the foundation came up with some relief, so to speak, for in-class CE courses. And we'll talk about a proposed rule in a minute that would allow courses that were already approved by the board as in-class to kind of have a simpler process of being able to do a virtual class. And they would still have to meet certain requirements, but they'll be allowed to do it without going through what we call IDEC approval, which is International Distance Education Certification Center. If you teach an online class for appraisal CE or QE, it has to have gone through an IDEC screening process, which basically tests the delivery mechanism, not the course itself. It is work. So there is some relief granted for CE that has already been approved. So you can't go out and now get a course approved with this system. You have to have been prior approved for in-class, and they'll allow it to be done virtually. It only applies to CE. We found out late yesterday afternoon it will not apply to QE. So that's not an option at this point. So we can't. That's not within our power to grant that. And if you're wondering, so we don't. That's not something we can just consider at this point. I did clarify that the supervisor trainee class, which is kind of an odd thing because as a trainee, you actually take it before you get a license. So in some ways, people think it's pre-licensing, but it's not considered a pre-licensing course. It's a little short 4 to 7 hour course. I did get clarification that course may be have some of these relief or so again look at those in that light. So but when we get to the rules that we're proposing, just so you know kind of where that's coming from. As far as the ASC, they're
Don, this is David. Could I just have you stop 1 second? I'm sorry. We have one participant on the call that must be either outside. If I could, again, a reminder for everyone to please put their phone on mute unless speaking. Thank you. Go ahead, John.
Okay. I was talking about that we had also got word from the ASC that their efforts will be more about technical assistance to states for the current period instead of being too overbearing in terms of compliance. But that said, we're still they're trying to help us through issues as they come up as to what we can allow and where we can grant relief. Hoping to get more answers tomorrow. We were told that all the remaining 2020 ASC reviews, which we were scheduled to be in November, will be postponed, but we will not have our normal review time in November. So we don't know. Obviously, they'll have to see how to redo their schedule once things open back up. So, but that's as far as just operational issues, we're looking at things. We certainly don't have any insight as to the governor could make it more of a shelter-in-place situation any day now. We just don't know. We're working to try to keep staff contact to a minimum. We try to be about half of us in here at any one time. I could see we could be shortly going to work as much from home as possible. There are some problems, as you know, since we weren't able to get our whole database converted back when we tried to put in a new system a few years ago. We are still taking paper applications and paper correspondence and a lot of things. So it's very complex to try to do much from home other than we can respond to the public. We can answer questions and going from there. So I'll talk a little more about the technical issues going on with our renewals during staff report. But I would just say that every effort, ma'am, contact with Chairman Reichel, Tom, Mindy, Sandra, and I are all discussing this issue on a daily basis of trying to make sure everybody's safe first, work gets done, and right now be as open as we can. We have not completely shut the doors to the public. We have a drop bin, ask people to put things in it, but that might be coming next week. If we would just tell people if they need to drop something off, they need to schedule a time. If you go on the CPA's website, you can see they put a banner on their website that they're closed to members of the public, and we're probably getting close to that. Just to let you know, on a typical day, the main people we have coming in are UPS, FedEx, and the mailman, but we do have randomly get, a couple of visitors a day, and it's probably the norm. All right. I'll turn it over to Simon.
Okay. David, do you want me to read the rules for everyone, or assume that everyone has version 3? I'm feeling like for the public, maybe I should read.
No, I think you should. If you would, please read the rule and then let the board know of any changes that were made during the time yesterday, so they're in fully aware of any of the changes that were made.
Okay. So for members of the board, I'm about to read the rule that I sent out last night, which was version 3 of this rule, but there are some changes that I made this morning. And the purpose of this rule was to deal with the state of emergency, specifically with regard to continuing and qualifying education and how to handle that. So I'll read the rule for the members of the public on and for the board members.
Sandra?
Yeah.
And before you start on that, again, just a tad more background. The purpose of some of these items, this is due to students that were taking qualifying education that were in the middle of their classes and basically were halted. Okay?
And also for continuing education as well. Right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Anything else we should say before we get into it?
Yep.
All right. Did I hear someone? Okay.
This is Mike.
Yeah.
I have one more request to kind of go on with what Dave said. If you could expand on the procedure of an emergency rule and what happens with those, how long they're in effect after you read it or before you read it, that would be good for everybody to know.
Absolutely. What if I read it first and then explain the procedure? Or
That's great.
okay. Well, I'll just start with it since you asked. Basically, an emergency rule goes into effect if you file it with the Rules Review Commission. And if they approve it, which I don't know why they wouldn't, it goes into effect within 5 days. And then it stays in effect for 60 days. At the same time that I file that emergency rule, we also have to file a temporary rule, which is kind of confusing, but regardless, it's to cover the time should we want this to expand beyond 60 days, then the temporary rule would be in effect. So that's kind of the way it works, and I'll explain a little bit more at the end as well. But here's what the rules state. Due to the current state of emergency in North Carolina and the United States, the North Carolina Appraisal Board is taking the following action. Schools and course sponsors for qualifying education courses and continuing education courses shall cancel or suspend all in-person courses effective immediately until May 30th, 2020. B, until June 30th, 2020, schools and course sponsors may offer remote distance learning for continuing education courses. In order to offer remote distance learning, the school shall provide to the board documentation that it has met the following requirements prior to the course taking place. 1, the educational offering under consideration is approved for traditional classroom presentation. 2, the platform utilized for distance education is live and interactive. 3, the instructor verifies photo identification of the student. And 4, the instructor maintains an attendance roster, which includes verifying 100% classroom attendance by, for example, taking attendance at various established times during the course. C, schools shall allow students to make up qualifying education course hours by attending another course that is equivalent to the original course offered by the same school. The make-up hours attended by the student shall be for the same content that the student missed.
Yeah.
Is now exiting.
D, until June 30th, 2020, schools and course sponsors may offer remote distance learning for qualifying education courses, as long as the qualifying education courses are approved in accordance with sections Roman numeral 3D3 and 3F6 of the AQB criteria, which, as Don discussed, is primarily the IDEX criteria. E, all other board rules that apply to continuing education or qualifying education that do not conflict with this rule are in effect and enforced by the board. And I added that part. And then F, an applicant who is unable to take the licensing examination within 1 year pursuant to 21 NCAB 57A 0301 due to illness or the testing center location being closed shall make a written request to the board. The board shall grant applicants an extension to take the licensing examination. Now remember, this rule is only in effect for 60 days under the emergency rule procedure. Question?
So again, we'll take the questions alphabetically. Ms. Alfront?
No questions.
Ms. Carmichael, Ms. Burnham?
No questions.
Ms. Carmichael?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. McGill?
No questions, sir.
Ms. Scotton?
No questions.
Mr. Talent?
None.
Mr. Taylor?
No questions.
Mr. Warren?
Of course, I have one.
Okay, Mr. Warren, go ahead, please.
The only question I have is to get Congress' opinion on whether we should specify the COVID-19 situation in the cap that goes due to the current state of emergency in North Carolina and the United States. Should we then say due to the COVID-19 pandemic, or do we need to specify?
Well, if I could respond to that, I have to attach a form to this rule, which I didn't share with you because it's not part of the rule, but you have to explain the reason in the form for why you're asking for the emergency rule, and in that we go through the whole entire process of the COVID-19 executive order of the governor. So I think they include part of that when they publish the rule also. The rules I've seen from other agencies, that's what they've done. So I don't think it's necessary, but I can add it. Doesn't really matter to me.
I didn't think about it until this morning when you were reading the rule. So I'm good with it the way it's written, if that's the case.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion, please, to approve.
This is Mike, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Ms. All-Francis, seconding. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Motion carried.
And just to follow up a little bit about the next step, which, as I said, this rule would go in effect within 5 days, and then at the same time I file a temporary rule saying the same thing. I think different dates, though. I'd have to put different dates in, and we can withdraw that rule. We don't have to proceed with that. But just in case we need to, we do need to set a time for a public hearing on the temporary rule, realizing we may not need that public hearing. And so we need to do it within 30 days, as I understand this, the best I can understand this. So I would propose, and you can all change this, but I would propose April 21st at 10 a.m. And what that means is that the public, this would be a virtual meeting, and the public would come and if they have any comments about this rule, they would make them via the conference call.
Format would be very similar to what we're doing here. We just have a court reporter online, and we would allow people from the public to comment if necessary.
Exactly.
Okay.
Is that okay with everyone?
Seems good, Sandra.
Okay.
One other thing I know was brought up before we changed gears on this topic, been brought to my attention by several people, but also I have a board member asked this morning, are we considering, or should the board consider, a waiver of the use tax requirement because it's due May 31st in order to renew? Right now, I don't know anything that might affect renewals. We could, the governor could make something broad and say, we should be allowing relief for renewal time or whatever. We don't know any of that yet. My suggestion, and I just listen to any feedback, is right now 7-hour use tap update is available online. There are several providers. I would encourage, and there might be some that we're going to offer an live in-class version that can now do it with this virtual option that we just approved the rule. I would suggest that we just tell people they need to go ahead and take it and that there are options available. If at some point this gets a lot worse and we think that it's only fair to grant relief, then we could certainly consider another emergency rule, a few weeks out and waive it. But I'll definitely, I've heard that feedback from a few of you. I will certainly, if anybody feels strongly, go from there. But I would open it for that discussion of what does anybody think we should do there.
So do we have, are there any comments from the board? And I will start with Ms. Alfront.
No comment.
Ms. Burnham?
No comment.
Ms. Carmichael?
I think the recommendations are very reasonable, yeah.
Hey, this is Tim.
Is now exiting.
Mr. McGill?
Yes, Don. Given my special situation, I'm not sure quite how I will deal with this, but I'll discuss that with you later.
Ms. Scotton?
And no comment.
I think Mr. Talon just exited. Mr. Taylor?
No comment.
Mr. Warren?
I fully agree with Mr. Rogers' recommendation.
Thank you. And I think along the same lines, when Don mentioned that, we may need to have a call concerning this possibly, but there could be other issues relating to COVID-19, and if so, we will give proper notice, and there could be possible emergency board meetings if necessary.
I'm sorry, David, we got cut off.
Oh, okay. So, Mr. Talon, you're back. Good.
Tim, we got cut off.
Did you have
Now joining.
Did you have any questions, Mr. Talon, based on Mr. Rogers' comment? Thank you. Okay. So, Don, do you have anything else in your staff report?
Let me just say if there's anything else we didn't cover. But before things really changed around here, Mr. Lewis spoke to a realtor group in Fayetteville on March the 3rd. I think they picked on him a little bit about appraisal issues. Kind of not uncommon when we go to speak to some groups. I told you about the ASB meeting on April 3rd. As you know, the Aero conference was canceled. It was supposed to take place next week. The 2 fees that we had for the early training will be refunded by Aero. We had not registered the group. We did put that on hold so we don't have to worry about any refunds there. I know several of you, including staff, had made flight plans. What we're going to ask you to do is to send a receipt and just a brief explanation of what the airline is offering to mitigate your situation. In other words, are they giving you a voucher for 12 months? I think that's the most common thing I've heard. Or, what, just let us know what they are planning to do. If you happen to get a refund, that's great, but I don't think that's the most common. And then we will probably go ahead and just reimburse everyone. And then if you're allowed to use that flight, let's say for the fall conference, and you do that, then we just wouldn't reimburse you again. If you use it for personal use, please let us know, and we would then deduct that from your future expenses. But that's, we want to make sure we indemnify everybody for any lost money. If let's say a year from now you still haven't been anywhere and you just have to eat it, then the board will take on that expense. It's no fault of any individual, but but we would want to mitigate it any way we can, just to be as responsible with money. Reminder, your statement of economic interest are due in April the 15th. We got that from the Ethics Commission, so if you haven't done that, if you have any time, if you're just sitting around and you have any time, that might be a chance to do. One other thing that relates to the use PAP course, I did check in just to give you an idea. As of today, 1,479 of 3,777 appraisers have taken the use PAP course, so right at about 40%. I think that number comes out to be. And our next meeting is scheduled for June 2nd, and we hope that we we will make arrangements and make improvements on this process if that becomes necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. So a couple things before we do go to closed session. On the emergency rule, I imagine we will notify interested parties and or post to our website. Sandra, is that correct? So that everyone can see that today?
Yes, that will be done as soon as I file it, or even before I file it with the Rules Review Commission. It'll be on the website, and interested parties will be emailed, and that includes anyone who requests the agenda and
court sponsors.
And court sponsors.
Good. So all those participants on the call, non-board members, you should be able to see that very soon as well. So, and again, just as a courtesy to the participants in the audience today, once we go into closed session, we will only come back just to go into open session and then close. So just as a courtesy to you, you're welcome to stay on hold while we do this. But again, just
they need to hang up, Dave, because we can't cut their volume off.
Oh, so they will have to hang up? Okay.
But we'll give them a time to call back.
Okay. So again, if you'd like to call back, that's going to be about 20 to 20. Let's say it's 10:20. You want to say 10:45? Don?
I think that would work.
So if any parties would like to call
Is
back,
now exiting.
if you would like to call back at 10:45, you can. But again, there will be no other objectives from the board.
Is now exiting.
The only thing we will do in open session is announce the
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Announce the results of the consent order, basically. That will be the only business handled on the other end.
Good. So that again, that will occur at 10:45. If you'd like to call back in, if not, I hope everyone has a good day. From the board perspective, I could have a motion to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.
Multiple people are now exiting.
May I have a motion?
This is Clay, so move.
Thank you,